So I actually came into the office in order to avoid the heavy construction in my village. So that's well. So yeah, as we know, those machines went away, right? The general purpose programmable computer is by and large, or was by and large before we tried to do something about it, was by and large a thing of the past. We had the PC and the Mac, as general purpose programmable machines, but all of the other hardware in our lives, all the other computing hardware in our lives is largely fixed function equipment. It's designed to do what the person who made it wanted it to do. So your games console is designed to run games which are authorized by the company that made the games console. Your set-top box is designed to play the media that your cable or satellite company broadcasts to you. Your mobile phone is designed to make phone calls. It'll run apps. So that kind of feels a little bit programmable. But of course, with very few exceptions, it's not really possible to develop apps on those devices. So they're still consumer devices, even though they are marginally programmable. That doesn't seem like too much of a problem, right? Because these machines are incredibly user-friendly, and for a lot of users, it's been an unquestionably positive trend, the trend away from general-purpose programmable machines to very much more polished fixed-function machines. But for people like us, who want to get involved in understanding how the equipment that we purchase, how the equipment that we use actually works, and who want to see another generation of people, for one reason or another, want to see another generation of people get involved in this and develop that understanding. Of course, it's a disaster because it means that you don't have kids buying hardware in order to play computer games on, and then accidentally becoming computer programmers, which is what happened to me. So yeah, we're sitting in Cambridge, we're looking around, we're thinking, what can we do about this? For a variety of reasons, we found ourselves very well positioned to build some sort of device to recreate the past. And I think that's how we started thinking. That's how we started thinking about it. We had incredibly parochial ambitions. We were very, very focused on the university here. And we really had the idea that if we were able to get 1,000 computers, 1,000 of these Raspberry Pi, we don't know what they were going to be. We knew they were going to run Python. Python's already been mentioned this morning. Python's always been very important to us. We think it's a fantastic programming language. It is my first programming language was BASIC, was BBC, a dialect of BASIC called BBC BASIC. And people will swear blind. There's a wonderful, I believe it's Edgar Dijkstra, who has this idea that once you've learned BASIC, you're irrevocably poisoned as an engineer, and you'll never be a competent engineer. I think I have an office full of, we're very, very lucky at Raspberry Pi. We now have 30 engineers working on the project. They are the 30 most talented engineers that I've ever had the privilege of working with. I don't think there is a single one of them who did not have BASIC as their first programming language, right? But things move on, and Python really, for us, is kind of the descendant of, it's the successor, the worthy successor of those dialects. So BASIC we used in the 1980s. So we knew we were going to try and build something that ran Python. That's where the Pi in Raspberry Pi came from. And of course, Raspberry is fruit-named computer companies. There are one or two other slightly larger fruit-named computer companies, and we had a little crop of them in Cambridge back in the 1980s. We had a tangerine, we had an apricot, we had, of course, Acorn, which went on to become ARM. Acorn's technically a fruit. So we had this idea, fruit-named computer company, Pi for Python. We didn't really know what we were going to build, but we really knew we wanted to build about 1,000 of them. And we thought if we got them into the hands of the right 1,000 young people, that we could do something about our little local problem. We could get our applicant numbers back up again, from 200 back up to 600, and times would be good. We incorporated the foundation in 2008. We built a load of prototypes, and I think we've shared in the past on our blogs some pictures of the various, very disparate kind of prototypes we built, various different things that could have become a Raspberry Pi. But by 2011, we thought we had something. We had something which you would recognize as a Raspberry Pi. In fact, we have something which would we have hardware from 2011 which will run last week's operating system. And we put that out. We mentioned we were going to do it. We got 600,000. We told the BBC journalist about it. We want to put the BBC brand on it. The BBC brand, very strongly associated with computing in the UK. We tried to put the BBC brand on it. Didn't succeed, but we did meet a lovely BBC journalist called Rory Kethlen-Jones, who put it on his blog. Got 600,000 YouTube views in 2 days in May of 2011, and had that terrible baby close your ears, that oh shit moment, where I sat down across the table. I had a wonderful 2 days. I sat at my desk in my office pressing F5, watching that number. Oh, she didn't like the bad language. watching that number go up, and my head was getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I was feeling like a big man. And then I, sat down at the kitchen table after 2 days with my wife for dinner, and we had this moment where we looked at each other across the table, and we realized we told 600,000 people that we'd build them a $25 computer, and we basically had no idea how we were going to do that. So I had a pretty busy 2011. Pete Lomas, my co-founder who developed the hardware, had a pretty busy 2011. Yeah, we got the thing in the market in early 2012. I guess the kind of the interesting thing, and the thing that's relevant to, the relationship with RS is the thing that comes. Right, okay, you're going to have to. Okay, excuse me a second. This isn't even Babbage. This isn't even the Raspberry Pi branded bear. This is a Strive bear. Right, so you're going to come and participate, aren't you? Come on. Sorry, guys. Perils of a Saturday morning keynote is that occasionally you get an extra. And this is alongside Raspberry Pi. This is Eben Upton. So she's going to sit on my knee while I finish this off. We were not for profit, as I guess you know. It's a bit challenging if you're not for profit and you tell everyone you're going to make a computer, and then lots of people want it because you can't go and sell shares in the charity. Right, so we had no way of getting the money. We had about enough money to build 10,000 Raspberry Pis, and given the level of interest in 2011, we were starting to think that those 10,000 Raspberry Pis, they might not last very long. That 1,000 number was looking a bit optimistic, and the 10,000, they might sell out in a month or two. And then we'd have to go build some more, and that we'd be on this kind of treadmill of constantly trying to build hardware on a small capital base. So we were very lucky. We bumped into a chap called Pete Wood, who maybe some RS people in the room know from Design Spark. And through our relationship with Pete and the subsequent relationship with RS, we turned ourselves into a licensing company. And that's been kind of the backbone of Raspberry Pi's growth and success, has been that we've been able to focus on designing the thing, and we've been able to have our partners, RS, focus on making them, getting them into people's hands. South Africa is always our kind of example, actually, when we talk about the benefits of this business model change that we put in at the end of 2011, early 2012. You've been able, I believe, to buy or at least to order, because I think we had some little pre-order issues in 2012. You've been able to order a Raspberry Pi in South Africa since the 29th of February, since launch day. And for a little tiny group of guys sitting in a shed well, not even a shed, we didn't even have a shed then, in Cambridge, to be able to sell product to people in South Africa on launch day and have a chance of having those get delivered inside of a few months was kind of a bit of a revelation to us. So we've come a long way since then. We've sold, we found out how long our 10,000 units lasted. I think the answer was an hour. We took 2,500 orders on the first day. Sold 1 million in the first year. We're 5.5 years in. We've sold between 15 and 16 million Raspberry Pis. And that's great. Those numbers are wonderful. And I mean, again, a little bit like pressing F5 on your YouTube views, it's nice to have big numbers. But the really exciting thing for us is that we've come to understand that our ambitions we knew our ambitions were small. We knew that our Cambridge-oriented ambitions were a little bit small. But what we hadn't realized really was the extent to which the 1980s was very problematic from very problematic from a sort of inclusivity perspective. Almost everybody in the computer industry who's my age looks like me, right? Middle class boys. What we've come to understand is that kind of golden age that we looked back on actually was a bit of a disaster. There weren't very many girls. There weren't very many people from ethnically diverse backgrounds. There weren't very many people from socially diverse backgrounds. And the exciting thing for us at Raspberry Pi is by becoming larger, by selling more of these units, by making more money for the charity, we've been able to go out and start to engage in traditional charitable outreach. Raspberry Pi was always supposed to be our contribution. The hardware was supposed to be our contribution. But we've actually been able to go out and do traditional charitable activities. We run a network now of over 10,000 after-school clubs called Code Club. We're reaching something like 100,000 children every week have an experience with computing because of Raspberry Pi that they wouldn't otherwise have had. The participants in those clubs, 40% of the participants, to put this in perspective, in the UK, roughly 10% of our engineering workforce is female. Under 20% of our engineering graduates are female. 40% of the participants in our code clubs from 9 to 13-year-olds are female. So there's a really fantastic, the other favorite statistic about clubs, these are generally after school clubs. A school which is in a socioeconomically disadvantaged area is somewhat more likely to have a code club than one which is in a richer area. So it isn't even like this is a middle class game anymore. We're very excited about what this says about what the future of our industry is going to look like, both in terms of the number of people and also the extent to which our industry represents sort of broader society. There we go. And one of the other things we run are things called Raspberry Jams, which you may be aware of. You're not the only people having a Raspberry Jam at the moment. I think those lights coming on suggest that I'm going to get thrown out of this room in 5 or 6 minutes so that people can come in here. As you can see, if I just turn this around, you can see this is our meeting room, and you can see we have it all set up for a Raspberry Jam later today. These things, the wonderful thing, the thing we love most about Raspberry Jams, we're not involved in them. Apart from this one, which is in our office, we're not involved in Raspberry Jams. We just come in, Ben. This is Raspberry Jam in Johannesburg.
Oh, cool.
This is Ben Uttle, who's going to run the jam today here and ran the very, 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 very first Raspberry Jam. If you've seen the playbook, right? The jam playbook. Ben wrote that, and he ran the very first Raspberry Jam in Manchester in
2012.
2012. 2012?
Yeah.
There we are. And how many Raspberry Jams have there been since then? Be on the spot. Just make up a number.
We know of over 1,000 individual events.
Yeah. I was just saying, the wonderful thing about Raspberry Jams is that they are genuinely a community activity. We provide support for them. We run this one here. We obviously provide the playbook and we provide the starter kits for people. But this is something that's grown up from the grassroots all over the world. So yeah, we're 5.5 years in. We think we're starting to make a difference. Some of the young people, some of the kids who were 13 years old when we started Raspberry Pi are going to start university this month and next month. There's a real sign that we're accomplishing we're accomplishing stuff beyond both geographically and just in terms of sheer numbers beyond what we'd hoped. And we couldn't do it without the community. So we're really very grateful for you guys for turning out today for your Raspberry Jam. We hope you have an absolutely fantastic time. We're going to have a fantastic time at our Raspberry Jam here in Cambridge. And we really look forward to seeing more awesome Raspberry Pi stuff coming out of South Africa. So thank you very much.
Eben, thanks so much for your time this morning. You're a round of applause. I think it's always so special to have one of the founders of something that we're so passionate about, being able to just share a bit of the history behind it. And I'm sure it wasn't an easy journey. It never is when it comes from humble beginnings and the shack or in your study. And I'd like to, Eben, if you've got a few moments, just we've got a few media in the room. Mm-hmm. Just flip around for a few questions. Vicky, yeah, sorry, there's a microphone if you wouldn't mind just grabbing that. Oh, whoa. Sorry. Yeah, not so. Okay, kill the microphone. Sorry about that. Wait to scare the baby. Maybe just come up if you don't mind.
Yeah, it's all good.
Sorry about that.
No, totally passive then.
Yeah. Just into ET.
Hi, so my name is Vicky, and I'm from a publication here called My Broadband. And I'd just like to know if you're going to be building or planning more powerful Raspberry Pis, maybe with better processors, and if so, what timeline are you sort of looking at?
So, as you know, we've done kind of three major generations of Raspberry Pi. We did kind of a half generation. So we had Raspberry Pi 1, we had Raspberry Pi B+, which was kind of a half generation, and then 2 and then 3. And we put in there's roughly across that kind of 2012 to 2016 timeline, there's a 4-fold increase in the RAM on the device from 1/4 of a gig to a gig. And then there's about a 12x increase in multi-threaded performance. What's exciting to us about the Raspberry Pi is Raspberry Pi as a PC is incredibly exciting to us. We think that there is a large market out there for both in terms of the business, but also in terms of sort of the ability to deliver on the charitable mission. There are a large number of people out there who really need their first PC, and so making the Raspberry Pi like a PC is important. We think the Raspberry Pi 3 just about kind of gets there. It is a usable PC platform. We do know that people need more performance, and we know people need more memory. I think we've said sort of kind of 2019 possibly as a bit of guidance for that. Raspberry Pi 1 lasted 3 years in the market. Raspberry Pi 2 lasted 1 year. I think Raspberry Pi 3 feels more like Raspberry Pi 1 in that because we've got to an okay PC sort of level of performance, an acceptable level of performance. I think we're expecting to keep Pi 3 in the market. What you will see during that 3 years, and what I think you've already seen in the first year and a half that it's been in the market, is software improvements. I mean, there have been a lot of software improvements going in the last year. So what we tend to do when we have a hardware platform that's stable for a long time, we do software work in order to tune up the performance. And you'll see more of that. I think there are remarkably, after 5.5 years, there's still some low-hanging fruit. There's still some easy wins. So I think you'll see a little bit of that. And of course, the exciting thing about that is, compared to launching a new piece of hardware, is it means those 15 million people who've invested in Raspberry Pi, they get to benefit as well. Right, we're not orphaning anyone. So yeah, that's the kind of guidance is sort of 3 to 4 years. So sort of 2019, 2020. I think if we're still shipping the current device in 2021, I think which would be a 5-year lifespan. I think we'd be pushing our luck a little bit.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure. Yeah, I think maybe to say it, I mean, you've seen the uptake by the bigger players as well. You know, the Microsoft are now going to deployable solution onto Raspberry Pi as well, which is quite cool to see the buy-in from the industry as well into this platform. You know, when Pixel came out, it was actually one of the first ones that you could actually use. I don't know if I actually have the Pi Zero. It's freaking tiny. I mean, this thing is phenomenal. You got a computer in your pocket, programmable PC, which is really cool. So, you know, we actually have a challenge every now and again to see if you can run everything from this for a whole day. So it's quite cool. Yeah, you've got the tablets, you've got the phones, but actually a programmable PC, that's power. So yeah, Clinton. Yeah, Clinton from Hypertext, if you want, just carry up with it.
Hi. My name's Clinton, I'm from Hypertext. I just want to ask you, you've probably seen millions of projects based on the Pi. What's your all-time favorite? There has to be one project you saw and you thought based on it.
Can I have two? Do you let me have two? Yeah, one's kind of serious and one's kind of whimsical. The serious one, the ballooning. People put them under weather balloons and set them up and take pictures. And that sounds kind of whimsical, but and there's a chap called Dave Akerman in the UK who started doing this, and he's done a bunch of stuff with RS in the UK. The reason it's a serious one is what we found was schools started doing it. Senior schools, secondary schools started kind of duplicating what he'd done, and then primary schools started duplicating what he'd done. And you can send this thing up, you know, it costs maybe $200, $300, and you can take pictures of the Earth effectively from space. You're not in space, but you're high up enough that it feels like you're in space. And it's amazing how kids respond to that. You know, kids. Another thing. I mean, I was a mad for computers in the 1980s. I was also mad for space stuff. Obviously, you have a South African who's currently doing amazing stuff in the world of space. Kids really are into it. And so what we've ended up doing is we've ended up doubling down and actually training teachers in how to do ballooning, just because of the impact it has on kids' enthusiasm, not just about computers, but about STEM subjects more broadly. So that's my serious one, right? Is this high altitude ballooning, and it's definitely worth Dave Akerman, definitely worth a Google. The whimsical one was from last year. There was a guy in Japan. And this is an example of kind of an AI-based thing, that there's a lot of people using AI, some of these open AI frameworks now with Raspberry Pi. And there was a guy in Japan whose parents run a cucumber farm. And they were spending a lot of time sorting cucumbers, like 23 grades of cucumbers, depending on how big they are, how green they are, how straight they are, how many little knobbles they got on them. And his mother was spending all day sorting these cucumbers. And so he built this machine used TensorFlow. He trained a TensorFlow a deep neural network model to recognize cucumbers and classify them into 23 categories, and build a little robot that had a little pusher that the things would come down the line and it would push them off into buckets. It was not perfect, right? But it was for a first cut. It was a massive labor saving for his mother. And I just love this idea of, a guy in Japan, we didn't think we were ever going to sell Raspberry Pis in Japan, right? Any more than we thought we were going to sell in South Africa. This idea of this guy we've never met in Japan, sitting down with his Raspberry Pi, putting it together. I think Lego was mentioned earlier, using it as a bit of Lego to connect camera, to the network so they could use TensorFlow, and then to physical objects so they could push cucumbers around, and using it to build a machine that we never would have imagined. So it's kind of like, for me, at least in the last year, that's my poster child for weird stuff that happens with Raspberry Pi.
Cool. Thank you so much.
I think there's some great demonstrations today, even which might change your mind. There, we've got a microbrewery at the back here, controlled by Raspberry Pi.
That would definitely change my mind. Maybe a little later in the
Anything beer related, it's great. We have a clustered Pi setup. We have an AI robotic control, mini Tesla, if you will. So some really cool projects here today on demonstration.
Who knew there was such an overlap between people who like computers and people who like beer?
Yeah,
You know,
we're having just now as well, so that's good. Who's it? Last question, if you want.
Hi, I'm Ryan from TechSmart. I was just wondering if you could elaborate a bit on what role you see the Raspberry Pi playing in bringing particularly disadvantaged people to STEM careers or greater exposure to technology, which otherwise perhaps wouldn't have been useful.
I missed a little bit of the question. Was it the role of Raspberry Pi in bringing in giving disadvantaged people access to STEM careers?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Well, it's really important for us. I mean, I mentioned sort of some of the sort of socioeconomic kind of some of the measurements we've made of the kind of socioeconomic impact of Code Club. Engineering is a wonderful thing, right? Because I would say engineering doesn't care who your dad is. There's a lot of careers where you get ahead because of who you know or who your family knows, and they get you your first job, and then you kind of bumble along. Doesn't work in engineering because the bridges, if you suck at engineering and your dad gets you a job in engineering, the bridges are going to fall down, right? Or the programs are going to crash, or the rockets are going to blow up, right? We love maths, we love STEM subjects because you can't fake being good at them. You know, just having a plausible manner isn't enough. So you know, it's always been an important thing. It's always been an important thing for us. You know, I was lucky to come from a pretty advantaged background. But you know, I've got a lot of friends who owe their careers, their kind of really good, solid careers, to the fact that they got involved in computers when they were young. So it is really important. We do a lot of our charitable work is focused on that. You know, it's no, you know, if all we do is give like middle class boys in the UK another advantage in their life, then you know how much have we really contributed? So it's very important to us. So one of the reasons why we're currently trying to understand, sort of on the international perspective, we're currently trying to understand what the, you know, how we get Raspberry Pi into some less advantaged countries. You know, it always seems strange to me that, you know, there's a vast amount of enthusiasm for computers all over the world, but there are only some countries that I can outsource. You know, India, for example, has an amazing IT outsourcing, IT outsourcing business. Giving you an example, some of the stuff from the Arab Spring stuff, right? You saw enormous numbers of young people in North African countries who had access to smartphones, and you could see that there was a lot of enthusiasm for technology. But I can't outsource my software engineering to Egypt, right? Why can't I outsource my software engineering to Egypt? That'd be fantastic for people in Egypt. So, you know, I think, you know, we have a big push in the countries where we're already strong. We have a big push to try to make sure that we don't just go for the more advantaged areas. And then over the next couple of years, I think you're going to see us trying to find some of these countries where there's enthusiasm for technology, but where people have been kind of imprisoned by special purpose computing. You know, there's an example of these people with their cell phones on Facebook, but, you know, how are you going to go from that to being a computer programmer? Trying to find some of these places where people have been imprisoned by the lack of general purpose computing and getting Raspberry Pi in there, trying to set them free and kind of incubate something. I think it's a potential, the potential is enormous, and it's a good example of how we've just got greedy over the years. You know, we've just, you know, we wanted to solve the problem of Cambridge. We had 800 applicants, so 600 was our benchmark. We had 800 applicants last year to Cambridge, right? Mission accomplished. But we just, as we accomplish the missions, we just get greedy. So, yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you. I think, yeah, just a round of applause again. Thanks, Eben, for your time this morning. I can't agree more. I think majority of the most successful ideas come from this groundswell. And really the interest starts with the people and the makers in the communities, trying to solve a solution using a platform like Raspberry Pi. And once you get the buy-in from the government or local teachers to actually utilize this, I mean, it's just the potential is endless here. And like I said before, the access to information is certainly underpins the tremendous value that the Raspberry Pi adds to the community. Eben, thank you so much for your time this morning. I'm sure you're close to feeding time again, so don't give you too much longer.
I think we may be closer to changing time than to feeding time. Okay, thank you very much again, guys. Hope you have a fantastic day.
Yeah, we will do, and thank you for your time this morning. We look forward to engaging with you in the future again.
See you later, guys.
Cool. So yeah, thanks everyone. It was quite a nice thing for the team to line up a chat with one of the founders and bring to this time this morning. So yeah, I think we're gonna take a quick body break now and chill out a bit and grab a drink and some coffee, and then yeah, we'll move on. I don't know, Simon, say anything?
Yeah, well, don't worry, I won't chat for maybe in a minute. Just to say, also from RS's side, that it's great to see such a fantastic turnout, so really appreciate it. This has been something that's sort of been a dream of mine to actually get going for ever since basically Raspberry Pi came out and they started doing Pi Jams in the UK. The challenge being that, you know, when I look at all the stuff that Mark's doing with Raspberry Pi, for me it's like, holy crap, that's rocket science. You know, I come from a financial background. I'm not a computer programmer. I dabbled a bit, but you know, just having looked at even some of the stuff here, it's like, whoa, this is like way beyond me. But the main thing for me is it's something that I'm absolutely passionate about in terms of trying to drive the education aspect of it and around the STEM skills. And that's really something that I want to try and get going forward within the South African market. And I think it's something that I've been surprised or disappointed that we haven't seen a much bigger groundswell in terms of the Raspberry Pi in the country. And that's something, working with Mark and his team, and by a chance meeting that we had, that we could actually start getting something going. And I'm really looking forward to an opportunity to really take this even to the next level and to keep growing this with people like that, and Entelect and his team. And that's what really excites me. So enjoy the rest of the day, guys. I think this is really awesome. For me, this is just the start. This is the beginning of some really great things. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, Brian. Cool, so very casual. We get to mingle, we get to chat. Yeah, if you want to chat to me about any ideas or what I've done and how I've blown things up, please I'm here. But yeah, grab a cold drink or coffee. And it's quite necessary on a Saturday morning sometimes for early starts. But yeah, it's and then we'll go into the judging and see what you guys have done in a couple minutes as well. Thanks.